So I was definitely right to think that Clouds on the Horizon and King's Tide were going to fit together seamlessly and be the true finale of this season, because they really did. Like, there's a little bit of generic, offhand expositional recap at the beginning of King's Tide to remind you what happened in Clouds on the Horizon, but otherwise, these could have just been one continuous episode, and it would have been perfectly fine. And what's cool about both of them is, and this shows up more in King's Tide than in Clouds on the Horizon, but it's present in both, is that the episodes are told sort of from King's perspective. Like, that's hard when you're not doing, like a written story or whatever. But, like, in some cases, quite literally, where we see through his eyes, this story is told through King's perspective, because King, at this point, is sort of the main character of this narrative. He's sort of taken that role over. And it works super well. Because while Ida has definitely grown a lot from her exposure to Luce, she already had motherly tendencies, and a lot of the brashness of her, the irresponsibility of her, the sheer length that she would take those things to, that was a facade. She was always a little more responsible than she pretended to be. But King was a completely different person at the start of this show. He still feels like the same character. He feels like an extension of that character. But he had completely different goals at the start of this show. Luce has changed him for the better, helped him to grow into someone who actually genuinely wants what's best for people. And I love that a lot. And if that weren't the case, then framing this part of the story from his perspective, considering where it goes, wouldn't have worked. They had to pull that off flawlessly for it to work. And they did. Because even at the start of Clouds on the Horizon, as we're being told what the rebellion's plan is to brand Ida with a coven sigil and then insert her into the Day of Unity spell so that her curse will corrupt the spell and cause it to fail, we see that King is just doing whatever he can to try to help out. Because now that he knows what he is, now that he knows that he's a Titan, a member of the same species that gave life to the Isles, that coupled with the fact that he is a better person thanks to Luce, that he does genuinely want what's best for people, just generally speaking, he's now started to see it as his responsibility to care for the people of the Isles in whatever way he can. To the point that even though it's just obvious that he wouldn't want to go around telling everybody he's a Titan, his first instinct is to do so that they'll look to him and rely on him. The others have to stop him from spilling the beans. Like when at one point, I think it was Darius says, "Titan, help us," just as a general turn of phrase, because he's frustrated, right? And King's response is to say, "I'll do my best." That broke my heart, man. It was just so good. It was so good. And Alex Hirsch, being an absolute champ and a veteran at this kind of genre acting, it just nails it all the way through, from start to finish. It's just perfect. And saying that has got me thinking about some stuff that comes later that I want to talk about. So let's keep going before I go off on a tangent and start talking about that too. But yeah, that's the general plot of these. That's the rebellion's plan. But meanwhile, Amity has been grounded by her mom for, what was the reason? Oh yeah, right. Trying to warn her mom that the Day of Unity will kill everyone? Seems like a thing to ground your child for, but alright. And so Luce, with her newly carved egg palisman, because as she puts it, she wants them to get to decide who they are, meaning that she does expect the egg to at some point hatch into her true palisman, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. She decides to go and save Amity, rescue Amity, and Gus and Willow and Hunter go with her. And man, it bums me out because the dialogue here implies that there were at least a couple of character-driven in-between episodes that we were supposed to get with these kids that we weren't able to get because of Disney shortening the series. because now they're so much closer than they were before. They're in different outfits. Apparently all of the students are in hiding after what happened at the school. And I wanted to see that stuff happen. But still, it's cool to see just how much a part of this group Hunter is now. Even if he hasn't revealed to them that he's a Grimwalker yet. But as he points out, Luce hasn't told anybody that she technically helped Philip either. These are things that they worry will change the way people look at them, so they should get to choose when that information gets out. Because it doesn't change who they are. And on one hand, I kind of agree with that, but on the other hand, I feel like getting it out in the open early with everything that's going on and all of these people relying on them would be the smarter choice. I don't know. We'll have to see. The information's definitely going to get out, though, because by the end of this, Gus has used that little spyglass thing that he got from Gray to distract Belos with his worst memories. And he saw them, too. And some of those worst memories were Hunter's backstory. So, you know. Anyway, they go free Amity, and it's absolutely adorable. We get a scene where, through some great voice acting, the show spells out for us how much Luce has changed Amity, too. And then we get an absolutely beautifully animated first Lumity kiss that's the perfect combination of romantic and awkward. It's so in character for these characters, and I loved it a lot. And so now their little group is off to try to sway Amity's parents and get them to stop helping the Emperor, because Amity believes that her dad, at least, will listen. And we do see in a little bit of dialogue between him and Adalia that he's already on the fence about this. She already treats him and his workers terribly. She already seems callous about how their weapons are used by the people who purchase them. And she seems completely unwilling to listen to any of his reservations at all. Even going so far as to passively threaten him the same way that she sort of passive-aggressively threatens the kids. So when they show up during a presentation of a new mech in disguise to try to get close enough to talk to them, particularly Alador, they're trying to find Alador so they can talk to him. It's actually King who finds him. They tell King to stay back because it could be dangerous. He can pretend like he's a guard watching the perimeter, right? But he finds Alador off on his own on what looks like a broken down playset that the kids used to use so long ago that it's in disrepair that he's put back together using abomination magic. And the two of them talk. And he tells Alador what the Day of Unity actually is, after letting him just vent about how Odelia treats him and the kids. And it's, I think, sort of a preview of things to come. It's King using what he's learned from being around Luce and growing as a person thanks to Luce to help another person become the person that they need to be. And so even after Adalia finds out that the kids are there and traps them in a barrier because she's just the worst, Alador shows up to help. And even though he definitely goes easy on his wife at first, because we've seen how powerful this guy is, in the end, he just stomps every single one of their abomatons. And we get to see how disappointed he is. We get to hear it in his voice, how disappointed he is when he finds out that Adalia knows what the Day of Unity is, at least more so than most people. She knows it's a draining spell that's going to kill a lot of people. And she doesn't care. Because she's been promised the same thing that the Coven heads have been promised. That she'll be royalty in the new world. That her family will be royalty in the new world. But she doesn't really care about her family. She doesn't care about the people in it. She cares about their status and their power because she thinks, seeing as how those are the things that she cares about the most, that those are the things that her children would care about the most too. As all this is happening, though, we catch up with Kikimora, and she's been demoted even more. She's now just a bus driver, basically. Truck driver, I guess, technically. She's like doing deliveries and stuff. But Odalia, being the person she is still trying to make sales, right? So she's given Kikimora the Abomatron, an abomination-based mech with like flight capabilities and barrier projection and everything. And so Kikimora is like a genuine threat here, even though she hasn't really been much of a threat for a while, like just based on her own power. And she knows Belos wants Hunter, so she tries to take Hunter. But as all this has been going on, she's made it clear that Belos knows about the rebels' plans, which had a lot of fans speculating that there was a spy in the rebellion. It turns out there probably wasn't. But that's beside the point. He knows either way. And Ida's in danger, so Luz wants to go to Ida. So she has Gus project illusions over her and Hunter so that they appear to be the opposite person. And Kikimora takes her instead, because she's reckless and stupid and heroic, and I love her so much. She's so great. And so now it's a race against the clock to try to save Luz from her own stupidity. And meanwhile, at the Day of Unity, we see that, yeah, they know what's up. They aren't 100% sure how the rebels plan to get Ida up on that stage, but they do know that they plan to get Ida up on that stage. They reshuffle stuff so that loyal Coven heads are nearest to Rain. And so after the curse does start to weaken the spell and disrupt it, they're perfectly prepared to shove Rain back into their proper spot and get the spell going again. And exposure to the spell has caused Ida's curse to flare up and start to spread, and it's eating away at her body now. So she's probably going to die, even above and beyond the fact that the new Coven sigil that she bears will kill her anyway. And the ship that Alador and the other kid characters were using to try to get there to save Luz has been shot down and crashed at the site. And King is injured. He's hit his head in the crash. And Luz is fighting Belos, and he still completely overshadows her. Like, in Clouds on the Horizon, because we're in King's Tide at this point, obviously. In Clouds on the Horizon, it's implied that just having her Talisman with her is giving Luz a bit of a power-up, because we see some circles forming from her glyphs now. And even though we don't see that in her fight with Belos, we could assume that the power boost is still there. And yet he's still stronger. He even says she's still decades away from beating him. He has a very clear understanding of just where she is relative to him in terms of what they know and understand about magic. And when someone is that sure of the gap between his own and his opponent's power levels, like, I think they win. I think they're the winner of the confrontation already, right? So Luz has to outsmart him. He does seem to have an interest in her not being hurt any more than necessary, because his main interest is to wipe out witches. He doesn't want to kill other humans if he doesn't have to. He definitely will. And even when he's pretending to care about Luz, you definitely feel like he's just manipulating her, like this is something that he's trying to use to get his hook into her, so that he can control her the way that he used to control Hunter. But it is something that Luz can use to worm her way in. So as he's petrifying her, she's able to convince him that she'll do anything for her friends, just like he'll do anything to save humanity. And that includes joining up with him, getting him to stop the spell and reverse it long enough for her to pretend that she's going to switch to his side long enough to brand him with a Coven sigil so that he'll die by the Day of Unity spell too, thinking that that'll cause him to end it. But things aren't that simple, because he never bothered to learn how. It's not his spell, remember, it came from the Collector, who he already betrayed, dropping him down in the same pit that he drops all of the bodies of the hunters that failed him. It's a literal child graveyard. And Belos never expected to want to end the spell, so he doesn't even know how. He gets pissed and turns into his monster form, and the fight continues. Luz's friends show up, but even their power combined with hers isn't enough. But thankfully they brought King too, and injured or not, he's awake again. And once again, they set him aside for his own protection, but he ends up being exactly where he needs to be. running into Kikamura, who was told off again by Belos. She's effectively hit rock bottom at this point, and I think there may be a redemption arc in store for her later on because of that. She definitely feels like she's ready for it. And she wants revenge on Belos, and being someone who's always listening at keyholes and at the gaps in doors, she knows all about the Collector. She even knows where Belos would have put him. So she takes King down to the Collector, and turns out it seems that that sacrifice that the Titan trackers were going to do to free the Collector was only a way to force a Titan to free the Collector. That a Titan can just free the Collector if they want to, whenever they want to, if they have that little moon glass thing in their possession. So we get a scene where King convinces the Collector that if he lets the Collector free, the Collector will end the Day of Unity and save everyone. And I love this scene. It's the one that I alluded to wanting to talk about earlier when I was talking about Alex Hirsch's voice acting. Because, recall, Alex Hirsch was also Bill Cipher in Gravity Falls, a character best known for manipulating children in order to carry out his own ends. And the Collector is a child. He is described by Kikamura as a child from the stars, neither witch nor demon, a child from the stars. And we know he taught Belos magic, and it seems to be glyph-based magic. His spells seem to be glyphs, at least the ones that he can bestow on other people. And so it's not like he's nothing like the characters we've been getting to know, but he's definitely far beyond them. Effectively a god, effectively an alien god, with the mind and morality of a young child. And so here we have Alex Hirsch as King, speaking very much like Bill Cipher would when trying to manipulate one of the Pines twins, trying to manipulate the Collector into saving everyone. And it ended up feeling very much like Bill trying to outwit the Collector. It was brilliant. Hirsch clearly drew upon a lot of the inflections that he perfected as that former character. And in the process, brought a lot of the old Kingisms in too. Because for his performance as King early on, you could definitely tell like he brought some of that Bill Cipher-ness to the character then too. So it felt almost like early season 1 King, but with the thoughtfulness and consideration of King now, versus the Collector, trying to outwit the Collector, who does seem like he's going to ultimately be the final villain of this story. It's so hard to describe it. It's so hard to describe it and make it feel as huge as it was in the moment. It's just a brilliant scene. Everything about it is perfect. And then he frees the Collector with a pinky swear. And the Collector, just as Belos is bearing down on the other characters to finish them off, let's say, that's the kindest way of putting it, he shows up and splatters Belos against a wall and completely breaks the magic system of this show. It's God, that scene. Probably the best way to get across how that scene made me feel is just to edit my reaction to it in here. Jeez, how is he standing up to all of them, though? His monster form must be exceptionally powerful. And there's the Collector, just stops it immediately. Oh my god.
Collector. You're free, just as promised.
As promised? I remember someone throwing me off a bridge. I'm not angry, though. Say, you want to play tag?
Holy shit.
I'm it.
Did he just kill him? Look at their faces.
Too slow.
They're not horrified enough by this. This kid, this child, changes everything. His power is impressive. It's impressive to look at, and the character's fun and entertaining. Don't get me wrong, but he's absolutely terrifying. The characters in this show, I don't see how they could ever possibly stack up to this guy. like, based on how King has had to deal with him so far, I don't even think, like, if we ever get the full backstory between him and the Titan, who seems to be who sealed him away in the first place, that might even be the thing that killed him way back when, right? But based on how King has been dealing with him up to this point, I think we're going to find out, if we ever get that full backstory, that defeating the Collector, even if it did cost the Titan his life, involved not like a straight fight between the two of them, but equal parts magical strength and manipulation. I don't think any of the conventional characters in this show can beat this thing one-on-one, or even one-on group. I don't think witch magic can stack up to this thing, period. And that does mean that the story has to go one of three ways. Either the characters get a massive power boost, which I have a theory about that coming up, so it's still possible, that allows them to stack up to this guy more directly, or they have to seal him away again, or they have to redeem him. And I do think that latter option is the most likely, because he is a child. That means that he does have the potential, at least as far as a story like this one is concerned, to mature and grow as a person, much like King already has. And I do think that if this happens, King will primarily be the loose to the Collector. That he'll be the one to help the Collector grow and evolve. Or if you want another slightly more similar comparison based purely on power level, and you've seen My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, he'll be the Fluttershy to the Collector's Discord. In fact, the playful nature of the Collector and how his various magical things that he does are framed like games in universe, he does come across a lot like a Discord-esque character. And in fact, the game that King is able to manipulate him into helping by offering to play with him is literally called the Owl House, which could very easily be a meta allusion to the fact that they do intend to redeem this character, because it was literally the Owl House which brought all these characters together and helped them to grow already so far in the series up to this point. And so after the Collector shows up and splats the big bad of the entire show against a wall like it's nothing, King then reminds him that he promised to end the Day of Unity, so he moves the moon like it's nothing, ending the eclipse and breaking the spell. And then as all of the characters who are near enough to it that they can try to escape through Belos' portal door, King, the one who promised that he would play with the Collector, uses his magic to push them all through while he remains behind to give them time to escape. And he shouldn't have had to do that, but it showed just how much he's matured that he did do that he was willing to sacrifice himself for the people he loves. But unfortunately, that's another thing he learned from Luce. It's one of the things that are maybe a little less healthy about her character. She is someone who is extremely willing to sacrifice herself. In fact, she tries to sacrifice herself here at the end as the portal is falling apart because the Collector is doing crazy Collector magic to the head. She intends to remain behind to hold it together while the others escape so that she can try to go back for Ida and the others. Pulling the old double sacrifice there. But then, of course, Ida was willing to risk sacrificing herself to trigger the curse, to make the curse worse, as it might end the Day of Unity spell. And even Rain has a sacrifice moment where they seem to use the last of their strength to detach Ida's arm so that the curse will stop spreading and save her, destroying the arm in the process, but also ridding Ida of her Coven sigil, which means that if she ever does manage to separate from the curse, she might get her magic back. There's just so much self-sacrifice in this episode. And that's cool. It's cool to see the characters propping themselves up. And they are just characters. They are here to suit the story. And that is one of the things the story is about. But I love these people. I don't want to see them keep hurting themselves like this. It's exciting to watch, but it's also kind of stinking painful. Nothing is more painful, though, than the realization that the portal door was destroyed and they can't go back. Like, Gus even just starts... He just breaks down crying, which is perfectly in character for him because he's the youngest of the group. In fact, all of these group scenes, even though we get hardly any dialogue from these characters, all these group scenes from the moment they showed up to help in the fight against Belos, they all feel so perfectly in character. Like, the choreography and the writing in this show is just so good. These characters can feel in character just by being near each other in a scene and playing off of each other in that limited way. It's so good. But he breaks down, and once he gets himself back together and they've all calmed down a little bit, they go home. They go back to Luce's mom, and that's where the season ends off, and we have no idea when we're getting more episodes yet, or more specials, I guess, technically. It's just such a place to leave off. King remains behind with the Collector, with everybody else on the whole Isles. We have no idea how that's going to go. Because the moment this guy gets bored, he could just wipe everybody out for funsies if he wants. It's absolutely terrifying. And yet at the same time, even though they got here in like the most traumatic way possible, I'm looking forward to Earth stuff with these characters. I'm looking forward to Hunter seeing the Caleb statue and learning more about his past. I'm looking forward to all of these characters getting to interact with V and interact with Luce's mom. I'm even looking forward to maybe an expansion of the cast on some level, since we do know that there are human characters who are at least noteworthy enough that they've had speaking roles in the show before. And I think what bums me out about that, more than the fact that we're going to have to wait for it all, is that I don't know how much of that we're actually going to get. The story is primed for us to get it, but I don't know how much of it we're going to get because I don't know how much of the story had to be cut away. And it makes me sad. There's also the fact that Belos is definitely still alive. A little sliver of him latches on to Hunter as they're running to the portal. And the closing credits for King's Tide make it clear that he's living in that little shack behind Luce's house. So he's still a player in this too. And straight up, I hope that doesn't eat up too much time. Like, I definitely feel like the resolution to him as the villain was a little rushed. But dang, man. I kind of just want to deal with this collector stuff from now on. You know what? No, actually, what I want, and this isn't an indictment of the show or anything, because the show is amazing as it is. But again, I just think it want a whole season of these characters interacting, being able to interact with Earth or the Boiling Isles as they want, learning magic stuff, and being characters who play off of each other. Like a magic school anime season or something, right? Without a villain for them to worry about. I just want to see these characters being these characters for a little longer. And because the show's been cut short, we're probably not going to have much time for that, if any at all. What time we have left is probably going to have to be spent on dealing with the villains. And while I'm excited to see that, I want to be absolutely clear, I am super excited to see that. It's probably the thing I want less of the two. And that does disappoint me. I guess what I'm saying is, even though Dana says that they're too late in the process and to actually produce a full season 3, can we somehow change that, please? And give them a full season 3? Or a season 4 afterwards or something, somehow, that lets us experience all these things anyway? This show's just too good to be cut short. It makes me so mad. It makes me so goddamn mad. But these episodes were fantastic. Absolutely perfect. I don't know. They could have been a little less intense, I guess. Like, that's my one nitpick. Because our real world is so goddamn intense anyway, man. Sometimes I just want my escapist fiction to be a little more escapist than this. But they were still brilliant. Just... That's a me thing, obviously. I can't think of a single nitpick about either one of these episodes that isn't a me thing. That's like a genuine objective issue that I feel someone could take with them. Right? And that's kind of where I want to leave this before I start rambling about stuff that I plan to put in other videos. Because you guys will have more fun with them if I actually get to expand on them in those other videos. These episodes were just great. I think probably the only reason I feel hung up about them at all is because we don't know when we're getting more content. I think if we knew when we were getting more content already, I wouldn't feel quite so down as I do right now. Because they're just so goddamn good. Like, I cannot stress enough. I want to reiterate. I did a terrible job of describing why it's so good. If you're somehow not sold on this show yet, and if you like fell out early or something, like my friend Nick is only on like episode 7 or something. Somehow. He's one of the people who told me to watch this show in the first place. If you kind of fell out on this show early, and you have any knowledge of Gravity Falls at all, go watch that scene where King is desperately trying to manipulate this small child, this all-powerful small child, into saving everyone he loves plus the entire population of an entire country. Using the same, like, inflections and inclinations he would use playing Bill Cipher. It's so good. It's just a perfect scene. It's perfect. Because, like, I wholeheartedly believe that King wouldn't try to manipulate a small child like that anymore. But he has to. It's the only choice he has. It's just so good. I'm actually going to go rewatch it right now. So I'm going to sign off. What did you guys think of Clouds in the Horizon and King's Tide, if you have seen them? Please gush about them in the comments with me, please. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.